This lesson provides an overview of the endocrine system, and here are the objectives. Now, the body has two overall control systems, the nervous system and the endocrine system. And the effects of the nervous system are typically fast in both onset and duration, while the effects of the endocrine system are slower in both onset and duration in general. As we'll see, however, there isn't a discrete boundary between the nervous system and the endocrine system. The boundary between them is actually quite fuzzy. Before we go further, let's define a hormone. A hormone is a chemical messenger that is secreted by a cell or tissue in one part of the body and has an effect in a distant part or parts of the body. And it has this effect, it functions by binding to a receptor. That receptor can be either on the cell surface or intracellular, and hormones act at low concentrations. You don't need a lot of a given hormone to get an effect. Hormone-secreting cells are organized into organs called glands. This box here is going to represent a gland. And there are many glands throughout the body secreting different kinds of hormones. And glands will secrete their hormones into the bloodstream to be circulated throughout the body, but only those cells that have the matching receptor for the hormone will respond to it. Chemically, hormones come in three varieties. There are hormones made of peptides. An example of this would be insulin, and these are typically hydrophilic and therefore bond to a receptor on the cell membrane. There are steroid hormones, which are made from cholesterol and therefore are hydrophobic. Examples of these would be the sex hormones, testosterone, and the estrogens, like estradiol, and these cross the cell membrane and bond to intracellular receptors. And then there are amino acid hormones made from amino acids. An example of this would be epinephrine, also called adrenaline. And hormones made from amino acids sort of share characteristics of the peptide and steroid hormones. In addition to their chemical classification, we can also think about how hormones affect other hormones. Trophic hormones are hormones that cause the release of other hormones in a hormone cascade. So a hormone that causes the release of other hormones is called a trophic hormone. And the cascade works like this. Imagine there are three glands. We'll call this one A, this one B, and this one C. Gland A makes and secretes a hormone that tells gland B to make and secrete a different hormone. And importantly, there are negative feedback loops throughout this as well, and they help to ensure that just the right amount of hormone is produced and released. To explain that further, let's name the hormones that each gland secretes with the same name as them, and I should have added the hormone here that gland C is producing, so we'll call that hormone C, and it's acting on some other organs. Now, we can imagine that if the level of hormone B goes up, we need some homeostatic mechanism to bring it back down to the right level. So imagine there is a negative feedback from hormone B back on gland A, shutting it down. As the level of hormone B gets too high, that's going to increase this negative feedback, inhibit gland A, and then the level of hormone A will come down, and the level of hormone B will come back down to where we need it as well. If the level of hormone B gets too low, then this negative feedback shuts down, the level of hormone A comes up again, and the level of hormone B comes up again. So this is a homeostatic mechanism operating by a negative feedback loop. And these kinds of negative feedback loops are present throughout the endocrine system. There would be one from hormone C back on glands A and B most likely as well. I'm just illustrating one. Now, the hypothalamus, which is a region in the brain responsible for homeostasis, and the anterior pituitary gland, which is a gland that it is connected to, are involved in many hormone cascades like this. So let's look at them in a bit more detail next. So here's a diagram of the brain. Forward is that way, so the eyes would be here, and we're zooming in on this part. This is the hypothalamus, and below it is the pituitary gland. Now, the hypothalamus is neural tissue, it's part of the brain. The pituitary gland is an interesting gland that's actually divided into two parts. The anterior part, which is the part we're going to talk about now, towards the front, which is a true gland, and embryologically it actually grows up from the roof of the mouth, whereas the posterior pituitary gland is true neurological tissue, and it has grown down from the brain in embryological development, and they act quite differently. The anterior part is the part that we're concerned with now, and in this trophic cascade, the hypothalamus is acting as gland A. It's going to secrete a variety of first hormones that travel a very short distance through a specialized capillary network called a portal system, trigger the release of different hormones from the pituitary gland. So hormones are traveling from the hypothalamus a very short distance to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland then is gland B in our cascade, and it's going to secrete a wide variety of different hormones that go all sorts of different places in the body, to the thyroid, to the adrenal glands, and to the gonads, for example. So this is a diagram of the thyroid gland, which is in the neck, and it makes thyroid hormones like thyroxine, and those are responsible for metabolic rate and growth and development. And so this would be gland C, and in fact all of these would be gland C in our schematic. The adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. This is the kidney, and that's an adrenal gland. Renal means kidney, and ad means on top of, so the adrenal glands are on top of the kidneys. And an example of a hormone made by the adrenal gland in response to stimulation from the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary is cortisol, and that's involved in the stress response. And these are the gonads, the ovaries in women, and the testes in men. And the ovaries make estrogens like estradiol. Estrogens are actually a class of steroid hormone. Estradiol is an example. And the testes produce testosterone. And these sex hormones, together with the trophic hormones that have triggered their release, are then responsible for things like the menstrual cycle and ovulation in women and sperm production in men. And although I haven't drawn it, there are negative feedback loops from all of these hormones back towards the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland, like we showed in the schematic. Now these are just examples. There are other hormones also under control of the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary, but you can see even from just these that the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary are in control of many hormones throughout the body, and therefore control a lot of the functioning and response of our body. And so it's for these reasons that the hypothalamus is often referred to as the homeostasis center in the brain. It takes in information, inputs from many different parts of the body that get to the brain, and uses those to respond to maintain homeostasis. And an important way that it does that is by triggering hormone release from the anterior pituitary gland, which in turn gets called the master gland, because of the way that it controls the release of hormones from many other glands via these trophic hormone cascades. So that's an introduction to the endocrine system and a bit of a closer look at the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary more specifically.